Jai Prabhuji, hello everybody. We're starting today the second course about the book Experimenting with the Truth, or the second section of the course about the book Experimenting with the Truth, that will deal with the mind. The first part was about the master-disciple relationship. We reviewed a few articles of Prabhuji from this book that deal with this topic. And today we are starting the topic that deals with the mind. And it will not be entirely correct to say that we start this topic today, because definitely we already touched this topic naturally when we spoke about the spiritual path and the master-disciple relationship, because these topics are interrelated without a doubt. But in this section we will deal with specific articles that Prabhuji discusses this particular aspect in reply to questions that are asked about this particular aspect. As we spoke generally in the classes, the message of Prabhuji, the contents of this yoga, although they are dealing with various topics and different religions, different schools, different philosophies, different times and personalities, and we learn a lot of new terms and again schools and approaches. At the same time, I think that we have a continuous feeling that we're always dealing with the same topic, that Prabhuji always speaks to us about the same principle, the same direction, the same problem, the same essence that can take us out of our current attitude. Again, in different languages and through different angles. But the essence of this yoga is one. So this is why, in a way, we are speaking about different topics, but at the same time, we always speak about the same essence. So we don't really transition to a different topic altogether, even though we're starting a particular chapter in our course. In my opinion, I think we mentioned it in one of the classes, the being well versed in Prabhuji's books and lectures is beautiful, to learn all the methods and so many ideas and philosophies and religions and paths, and it can enrich us a lot intellectually. We can learn new ideas and terms. It can enrich our thinking process. It can give us a lot of knowledge. It can enrich us as human beings. But in my opinion, the utmost value of the association with these contents is the association itself. That we get through all the books, all the lectures. We don't need a massive amount of words in order to connect with Prabhuji and with the essence that he delivers to us in every single piece of information. This dialogue is always open. And I think as spiritual aspirants, this is what we are seeking. We are seeking the dialogue itself. We are seeking the association itself. So again, the familiarity can be beautiful and enrich us. And of course, I personally enjoy it and would like to know very well Prabhuji's books. But at the same time, I don't forget that the most important point, I think, that Prabhuji reveals in all the contents is the establishment of each and every individual in their own essence, in their own authenticity, in their own truth. And we can definitely get a lot of inspiration and assistance and taste and help from Prabhuji in all the content in order to be attracted to go there, to go into ourselves. So today, again, we are starting this topic, we will speak about the mind. And I want to start this class that will be an introduction with a description that actually Prabhuji shared with us very recently. Of course, about the mind, I heard from Prabhuji from the first day that I'm in the ashram. It's a very basic and fundamental topic in the understanding of the spiritual life. But Actually, in the last few days, there was a specific explanation that Prabhuji gave to us regarding the retroprogressive yoga, that there was an element there that touched me very deeply and connected in my mind with everything that we meet in Prabhuji's essence when he speaks about the mind, this specific element. So Prabhuji talked about the retroprogressive yoga, as I said, and he explained how this path offers both directions, both the direction of the retro, which is to go into our roots, into maybe what we were before we were covered with so many external identifications. And at the same time, it also encourages or includes within it the direction forward, to grow, to be in touch with what happens in time and space, maybe in science, maybe in technology. It does not reject it. But it includes both the importance of connecting with our authenticity, with the roots, with our essence, with who we are, and at the same time, open to the experiences of the world and to our development as human beings on this planet. So in this specific explanation, and Prabhuji compared it to a tree, that in the example of a tree, we see manifested that the growing of the roots inside the earth downwards is not contradicting the growing of the tree upwards, but the opposite. They are integral phenomena that happen, that are expressions of the same phenomenon. It happens together, simultaneously. There is no contradiction. There is no separation. So this is, in the same way, the retroprogressive yoga offers a complete and integral process of the retro and of the progressive. So in this specific explanation, Prabhuji said that all of us, human beings, at a certain point of our lives, were uprooted from our roots. We're disconnected from our roots. And this, in fact, connected in me very much to the topic of the mind. For the following reason, that when we speak about the mind, soon we will speak about a few explanations regarding the mind. We, in a way, speak about our mental activity, our thinking. But we do not, when Prabhuji speaks about the mental approach, or when we want to transcend the mind, we don't want to stop to think. When we see individuals that are established in transcendence, what we say, that are realized beings, that are aware of their essence transcendentally to the mind, they don't stop to use their mind. Their mind does not become dysfunctional, but the opposite. It becomes more clear, more open. So, in my humble understanding, Prabhuji speaks about the mental activity that is disconnected from our roots. This is where I connected the two points. When our thinking process is mechanic, is coming from outside and maybe going back outside, but it doesn't go through who we really are, through our roots, through our authenticity, through our maybe most intimate opinion. We have many opinions, but maybe we don't know what is really our opinion about our opinions. About our experience, disconnect from the experience, so we can have mental activity that is disconnected from what we feel at this moment. This is mechanic. This is something that separates us. And I think that to this Prabhuji refers to when he speaks about the mental activity that we want to transcend. Of course, not thinking altogether. We want to think more, and this space encourages us to think and to analyze and to bring more and more clarity to our thinking, even though, of course, our highest aspiration as spiritual aspirants is an experience, is to experience who we are, not to know it intellectually. But the usage of the mind is not disregarded, or it is not recommended to disrespect the importance of the usage of the mind on this path. So, In one of the classes, we mentioned the point that Prabhuji says that the truth cannot be spoken about. That all the realized beings that spoke to us about the truth, and all the religions, and all the prayers, the Upanishads, etc., etc., the highest, most subtlest words are still not the truth itself, because the truth can never be verbalized. We cannot explain the truth. We cannot understand the truth. We cannot perceive the truth. We quoted from the Advaita Vedanta book of Prabhuji, this point, this specific point where Prabhuji speaks about it. But what can be spoken about, and was spoken about, and is spoken about quite a lot, is the veil that stands behind us and the reality, that disturbs us to see things as they are, which this is the mind. In many religions and paths, we will see that the mind is compared to a screen that doesn't allow us to come in touch with life, that doesn't allow us to see things as they are, that separates us from truth, from reality. And about this veil, we can speak, we can analyze this veil, we can understand how it is created, what is it made of, what is the nature of this mind. And this is what we are going to do in this section. Hear from Prabhuji about this topic of the conditioning, the mental conditioning, the human conditioning, the mind. We can have different names to it, but we speak about this aspect of the mental activity that disconnects us, or that is disconnected from our roots, and therefore doesn't allow us to be in our truth, to be in our own reality. And Prabhuji, in this specific section, we are going to see answers to 4 specific questions that are all related to the mind, and Prabhuji replies to them. The first one will be, what do you refer to as the human conditioning? The next article will deal with getting rid of the mind. The third one is an answer of Prabhuji to the question, how can I control my mind, or at least pacify it? We see a similar topic. And the fourth one, also similar, it's an answer of Prabhuji to the question, why does my mind resist meditating, resist meditation? And of course, all these topics are interrelated, and Prabhuji is going to shed light from different angles of this phenomenon of the mind. And Prabhuji does not give us answers, in my opinion, that satisfy the mind. The mind, when we ask how or what, or we want to know answers, or we want to know how to do certain things, we want to know what is the problem and what is exactly the solution. As minds, what we seek is some recipe, some clear actions, clear process that we can follow, and maybe that we can measure in time how much time I can achieve each stage. We like to perceive things, to understand them, and to be able to control them. We will not get such answers from Prabhuji. But what we will get, in my opinion, is clarity about this phenomenon of the mind, that this clarity will help us in itself to relax the mental approach, to relax this mind that is an achiever, that is a controller, relax this controlling of the mind, and be more in listening to Prabhuji, and therefore more in our own presence, in our own experience. Relax a little the mental activity, which this is what we want in all these questions. So I think if these questions are coming not just from the mind, but from some inner genuine aspiration to be free from the conditioning, we will get answer that will satisfy our thirst, in Prabhuji's words. And in this specific class, we are going to speak a little bit about the mind. I want to take you to a little tour. This is the tour that I myself went through with my own study of this topic, intellectual study. So in the ashram, in addition to the immense grace and most valuable aspect, which is the association with someone who is established in this knowledge and speaks from his experience and guides us from his own realization, which is the, again, highest value of being in the ashram, we'll also learn intellectually. A lot of topics we learn from Prabhuji directly, we learn together, study together, and there are certain topics that each individual can decide to study by himself, maybe through Prabhuji's direction, inspiration, through his own interest. We all have some different individual journey in the intellectual aspect also. So for a second, I want to put on the side what I heard specifically from Prabhuji, with this we will try to end this little tour. And I want to take you through 3 stations that I myself went through in my own study regarding the mind that gave me different angles about this aspect. And I feel that the fact that I came across different languages that describe these truths, all of them come from realized beings that speak from seeing of the reality, gave me a lot of richness in understanding and maybe in helping in understanding the phenomenon in reality. We don't want just to memorize words and know, terminology and to repeat some explanations, but ultimately as spiritual aspirants, we want to understand what are we talking about. So I feel these specific 3 angles help me to deepen again in this phenomenon or term, this aspect of the mind, and also understanding that when we use words, many times the same word can refer to different explanations and sometimes even opposite ones, the same word. And I think when we will go through the explanation, we can understand how all of them refer to the mind, even though they are very different in a way. And again, we will end this tour in what I feel is most important that I heard from Prabhuji regarding the mind. Just very few elements. Of course, Prabhuji talks a lot about the mind in his lectures and books, and it is most recommended to delve into it through Prabhuji's words directly. But here we will take a few elements that I think are major to understand the mind and that Prabhuji speaks about the mind, and we want to take with us these aspects before we start and delving in the articles of Prabhuji, which will start from the next class. And in the end of this class, we will watch together a lecture of Prabhuji. It's about 15 minutes lecture, where Prabhuji speaks about the mental activity, and he takes us through a transition from the mental activity into the recognition of consciousness, through the eyes of the retroprogressive yoga, through the understanding that everything that we come in touch with as human beings is experiences, different experiences. And it is, I feel that this lecture can be watched in 2 different ways, that maybe they can also be simultaneous, but I see different aspects that maybe also can fit different individuals or different moods that we can be at. One of them, we can just definitely close our eyes and go with Prabhuji into complete meditation. And the second way is to carefully listen to it with the intellect, because Prabhuji takes us through an analysis. And if we go through the intellect, we want to follow what Prabhuji says word by word and try to recognize it, try to really see it, and how really we understand that the mind is in fact a veil that doesn't allow us to be situated in the reality, which is consciousness. So this will keep for the end, and it will be, I think, a good foundation for us before we delve into Prabhuji's words in the following classes in the articles regarding the mind, when Prabhuji will speak about different aspects of the mind. So I think this lecture is a very good foundation. So now we go to our tour, right? We said we're going to accompanying my own study regarding this term, visit 3 stations and learn a little bit about the mind from different angles. The first station is the mind in Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is one of the 6 schools of Hinduism, yoga or Raja Yoga. And in this school, the father of this school is Patanjali Maharishi, who is the author of the Yoga Sutras. And he speaks about the mind as all the mental activity, all the vrittis or mental waves that are passing on our consciousness, in our consciousness. This is the mind. And Patanjali speaks about 4 aspects of this mind. We have 4 departments that this analysis helps us to understand this function. So it's one function that consists of 4 different functions. The first one is the function that is called manas, the aspect that is called manas, that its duty is to perceive information through the senses. So we hear sounds, and we see visions, and we taste, and we smell, and we touch. We receive information all throughout the day through the manas. This is this aspect of the mind that is receiving all the time, right? We can hardly avoid, or we cannot avoid receiving messages all the day. And this is because of the manas. This is one aspect of this mind that connects us to this world. The second aspect of the mind is the chitta. The chitta is a storage of information that consists of all the knowledge that we have, all the sensual experience that we had, all the ideas that we have, all the words, all the names, all the places, everything that happened to us, everything that we remember and not necessarily remember on the conscious level is sitting in our chitta. Everything we're going through is sitting there. And this chitta, of course, influence on who we are. Each one has a specific chitta that influence on his specific personality, specific image, specific conduct and perception in this world. The third aspect is the aspect of the buddhi. The buddhi is a very important aspect. Now comes the logic and the ability to think. It's the intellect. So the buddhi is the aspect in us that is able to process this data, to conclude, to infer, to make comparisons, to think, to decide, to prioritize, to analyze. All this is the buddhi. And the fourth aspect consists of one thought, but a major one. We can think that it's a small department, but very fundamental, very problematic. This department is in charge on all the complication in our lives, of the reason that we want to pursue spiritual liberation. And as realized beings told us, is the cause of our suffering. And this aspect is called ahankara, which means I am the doer. This idea that I exist as an entity and I am the doer in my life, it's a thought, Patanjali tells us. It's another vritti, but very dominant and very influencing one, which is called the ahankara. The ahankara causes us to relate everything that happens in the manas, in the chitta, in the buddhi, to who? Of course, to me, to us. If we now smell a delicious cake, we immediately relate it to us in some way. We want it, we like it, we're on a diet, whatever it may be, disturbance maybe, whatever it may be, it has some relation to us. And this is true to each and every experience that we will pick. We can never be neutral because of this ahankara. And because we can never be neutral, we are never in touch with things as they are, because we are in touch with things through our narrow vision of reality, that is our particular chitta, particular manas, particular buddhi, and this idea that all of them are us, are me. We relate everything to an entity, that we think this entity exists, and the realized beings tell us this entity is a thought, is an idea, that we cling to it and we identify with it, but it's not the reality. So because of this idea, we do not come in touch with things as they are. This is the mind, okay? All of it is mental activity. And in this stage, in my particular study, I will reveal, I think at the beginning, I looked at it in a more maybe basic level, and the mind for me was something bad, problematic. We want to transcend the mind, we want to conquer the mind, we want to live without mind, just experience our essence, etc. The second station is in Vedanta. Vedanta is another school in Hinduism, another darshana out of the 6 darshanas. Yoga is one of them, Vedanta is another one, or Jnana Yoga, or Tara Mimamsa. And in this school, the explanation that I came across, which can give us another angle into the mind. First, in Vedanta, there is reference to the mind separate then to the intellect. So it looks about on the mind and on the intellect. And the mind and the intellect have this certain relationship. In this relationship, the mind is like a river, and the intellect is like the banks of the river. So the role of the intellect is to direct the mind, is to balance the mind, is to control the mind sometimes, give order to the mind. What was new and interesting for me particularly is that in this explanation we learn that the mind is not a problem altogether. We don't want to be without the mind. The opposite. The mind is life, is prana. But we need the intellect in order to support it. So if the mind is too dominant and the intellect is too weak, we will be miserable. We will be maybe sometimes on the border of insane, etc. But interestingly, if the intellect is too strong, we will be dogmatic, we will be mechanic, we will be disconnected from life. So we don't want necessarily the strongest intellect possible. We don't want to live only on our thoughts, that everything that we do and live and every decision that we take is only based on logic. We want to live also. So we need some balance between the mind and the intellect. So this is a different way again to look at this topic. And maybe also we find different approaches of realized beings to how to approach the mind, how to conduct, how to relate to it. Third station is the station of Buddhism. So when I went into the study of Buddhism, I met the term of the mind with another different definition or explanation. In Buddhism, we refer to the mind as the space, the clean space that is empty from definitions, from patterns, from words, from explanations, from perceptions, like Brahma, like our eternal, clean, true nature. But each one has kind of a specific space in which he operates. This is our essence. It's who we are. And therefore, we don't want to get rid of this mind for sure, but we want to realize our mind. That is clean from the patterns, that it's clean from the conditioning, that it's clean from whatever we put on this clean space. But the mind is consciousness. And I think, although in a way we can see that the explanations are different and even opposite, we can understand the connection, because in the mind we speak about our consciousness, and a lot is happening in the consciousness. So we can refer to what is happening as the vrittis that are on this consciousness, and we can refer to the consciousness itself when we speak about the mind. So when we read and when we listen and when we come across these words, we need of course to use discrimination and intelligence to understand what is a specific reference of this use of this word. For example, we can on one hand hear that we want to transcend the mind, that the mind blocks us from being in touch with reality, that realized beings are operating transcendentally to the mind, that their actions do not come from the mind, that their actions do not come, the words, do not come from their minds. But at the same time, we can hear that maybe Shankaracharya or Nagarjuna were of the greatest mind that ever walked on this planet. So was he a mind or wasn't he a mind? It depends how we use, what is the specific context in order to understand what is the specific meaning of the word mind in each context. Prabhuji. So a few elements that I heard from Prabhuji regarding this word that I think are essential for us to take with us and to understand before we enter into this topic. Of course, Prabhuji speaks about the mind as the sum total of all our experiences. So I think everything that we can perceive is the mind. If we can name something, if we can see, if we can touch, if we can remember, if we can speak about, it's the mind. About the essence, as we said, we cannot speak. We cannot perceive the essence. We can only be the essence. This is what Prabhuji tells us. Anything else in us is our mind. Everything that happens to us, all our relationships, everything lives in our mind. One important point that Prabhuji makes regarding the mind is that the mind is not an object. It's not something that we can remove or get rid of, but it's an activity. And he compares it to a dance. That once the dance stops, there is no dance. Where is the dance? No dance. It's an activity. In the same way, the mind exists as long as we operate through the mind. Once we don't operate through the mind, there is no mind. So regardless of how complicated our mind, or maybe abundant with vrittis, with experiences, with impressions, regardless of this, we can at any moment experience ourselves not through the mind. Another aspect that I want us to make a note regarding Prabhuji, is that again, when Prabhuji speaks about the mental activity or the mental approach, or many times he will say the mind doesn't like something or the mind likes something. When he speaks about the approach of the mind, so I think what we spoke about in the beginning of the class will be good for us in order to understand. Prabhuji speaks about the mental activity that is disconnected from our roots, that is mechanic, that it's external. And the fourth point that I wanted to make regarding Prabhuji is that Prabhuji does not speak about the mind as something that we want to conquer or kill or beat. And he explains that if we want to get rid of the mind, the one who wants to get rid of the mind is the mind. In this message of Prabhuji, we will never find a recommendation to create a new conflict or to create a new reality that we want that will happen to us that is different from our current reality. And this is why I think Prabhuji's approach is always only observation. We said that in this yoga we will not find techniques and methods and recommendations and what to do and what not to do, etc. But if we insist to find a direction, a recommendation, some indication, I think that it will be right to say that it will be always observation. Prabhuji encourages, and he lives like this, to observe whatever can be observed. Any problem, any complication, any emotion, any desire, any fear, whatever it may be, is coming from lack of consciousness. And by observation, we bring more consciousness. And what Prabhuji explains about the observation is that once we observe, say we observe the table, one thing that is certain immediately is that we are separated from the table, that we are not the table. And in this way, Prabhuji has different guidances of observation, when he takes us through the observation of more and more elements in us. We can observe the physical body, and by this we separate ourselves from the identification with the body, because we can recognize it as separated than us. We still exist and can observe it. It means it is not us. We can observe our thoughts. Prabhuji will take us through observation of the thoughts, through observation of the feelings, etc. Anything that we experience, we can observe. And this is always the recommendation and also the direction of Prabhuji regarding the mind, if we need to say it in one word. And in the specific article that we are going to review, we will see a more specific angles and direction that Prabhuji gives to us regarding our work as spiritual aspirants with the mind, or our options that are available in order to examine this phenomenon and to bring clarity, as we said in the beginning. So now, as we said, we are going to watch a lecture of Prabhuji that I think will bring us from the words more into experience with his words, in order to hear from Prabhuji about the mental activity and how we move from the mental activity into the recognition of consciousness with Prabhuji's words. So in this, we will finish the class. Jai Prabhuji.
Stop the mental activity, and there is the experience of joy. Because the mental activity make you define things in time and space. Like mental activity define objects in time and space. And that is a kind of concealment of consciousness. And And the very nature, the essence of consciousness is joy, ananda. And what is enlightenment? The recognition of consciousness. And consciousness is all what it is. So it should be very simple to recognize consciousness, because consciousness is all what it is. And that is my work for so many years, to try to to assist you in the recognition of consciousness. And any meeting is a new try, a little more try to assist you to recognize consciousness. And when I say consciousness is all what it is, it's not, you say, that is not my experience. There are so many things here, no? No consciousness. I see people, cameras, microphone. I see trees, no? Bottles, chairs, tables, but not consciousness, no? You see yourself, a body, thoughts, feelings, activities, but you don't see consciousness or awareness. When you see here this phone, it's an object. And you see this is not consciousness, this is an object. You perceive a color, you perceive a form, you perceive a texture. Means you take a lot of different perceptions and you define them, your mind define them as a telephone. This is a phone. In the same way, when you look around, you don't really have objects. What you have are perceptions. You look at the trees and you perceive green, you perceive colors, you experience colors, you experience certain texture, you experience certain smells. Means what you really have around is not a universe, it's not things. If you look around, what you see is a lot of experiences. No? When you look around, you don't see really a world, but or maybe a world, but a world of experiences. You don't really, never really become in contact with an object. But with experiences, everything that you perceive in life, in your life, was an experience and is experiences. Every single moment. You look around and you see colors, smells, textures, but and what is experience? What is the essential thing connect to experience? Consciousness. If there is not consciousness, awareness, experience is impossible. No? Consciousness and experience are the same thing. Experience is, we can say, another aspect of consciousness. You, yourself, to yourself, is a collection of experiences. Your father, your mother, your childhood, All that what was experiences. You perceive yourself even now, touch, look, and you're an experience, consciousness. The universe, the cosmic manifestation is nothing else but consciousness, experience. The mind, the fine, cut. This is here, this is there. This has a beginning, this has an end, and that is the reason that for the mind should be a creation and a creator, a beginning and an end, because mind put everything in time. And the very essence of consciousness is joy. So if for a moment you ignore the mind, for a second, ignore the mind. And you stay there, in consciousness. If for a moment you stop to the desire for enlightenment, the desire for consciousness, don't put consciousness as another object there outside. Do you understand what I mean? Don't put enlightenment, God, Krishna, as another object in this world of objects, objective world. But try to look at it from a different point of view. Like all these so-called objects or experiences take place in consciousness. You understand what I mean? So consciousness cannot be a goal. It's only a question of resting in the light. Many times we talk in the scriptures about the light. Tattvadarshinaha, the one who sees the light. Remember? Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upavekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Search, look for one who has seen the light. The light. Because whatever you can experience, everything you can perceive because there is light in this room. If you put everything in darkness, you cannot perceive nothing. But at the moment there is light, you can see. You can see a phone, you can see a television, you can see tables, you can see chairs, you can see people. At the moment in darkness, you cannot see. And you see people, objects. But the real wise and enlightened one is the one who is enlightened because he saw the light. Whatever you can perceive in this world of names and forms is because of consciousness. The wise is the one, Tattvadarshinaha, who directs his attention to the light of consciousness, to the light of consciousness that allow everything to take place. All this universe of experiences take place. This world is not what you think. That is what I mean to see what is as it is, and not as you think it is. You think that you need some object in order to be happy, some situation. You don't understand. This is crazy, no? You don't understand that happiness or joy is the nature of consciousness. So the way to be happy is not to bring some object or some situation or some place. The way to be happy is very simple, is to ignore the mind with all the thoughts. There is some presence that is aware that you are present here. There is some presence that is aware that you look at me. Stay in that presence. Be that presence. Stop thinking about. And there, slowly, in the heart, slowly, you will pay attention that joy comes, happiness comes. You live in such a way, you live in such a way that such is, all the time such is the way. You live in such a way, pay attention, you live in such a way that you look at the morning in the mirror and you wait to see a smile in the mirror in order to be happy and smile. That will never happen. You need to smile and then you will see a smile in the mirror. You look? No smile. How I can buy a mirror that I can see a smile? Only when you discover your smile that is consciousness, you will see a smile in the mirror.